Hey there guys, it's Obsidian Show. Got another video for today. And we know about the previous video in terms of all the layoffs of DC impacting MEPS were the biggest one. We also have several other members of Daybreak and Dimension Link Studios being impacted. But it's not all bad news. So DC today, well not DC itself, but today it was announced that DC Universe Online has a brand new creative director, Al Rivera. If you aren't aware of who Al Rivera is, he's been heavily involved with Star Trek Universe Online for the past 20 years or so. If we go back down to his other projects here, he's been a part of early games like The Sims, City of Heroes, City of Villains, Marvel's, Champions Online, and then obviously Star Trek Universe, Star Trek Online for the past 20 years as various positions. So if we look a bit more expanded here, so systems lead designer, creative director, so working his way through all aspects of development for an MMO. With the creative director position within DC, I feel is the most impactful role. So previously, at the very beginning of the release of DC, I don't know if we had a singular creative director. I know like Chris Cow was involved, Mark Anderson, Jens Anderson was there too. It wasn't until I think 2012 or 2013 is when Jens completely took over as senior creative director. And that was up until so Jens Anderson Spittle, until he left in 2017. And then 2017 to 2020, we had S.J. Mueller or Nerd of Prey. And then when she left in 2020, the past 3 years, we've had no creative director at all. So at least I feel that the creative director role is the most impactful and most changes to the game can be tied back to their type of vision. So, I mean, if we look at Spittle, I mean, sure, there's lots of aspects that he brought to the game and changed with the game that weren't well liked or well received. But the main difference was that he was making those changes. It wasn't just keeping things, in the status quo. With SJ, personally, I mean, I didn't have a lot of interaction with SJ, but I mean, still everyone knows what the game was like from 2017 to 2020. I mean, nothing really changed like at all. Stats revamp was very poorly received and kind of rushed. Not that maybe she necessarily had to do anything to do with that, because that's more on the system side. But if you said summarize Spittle's impact on DC, you could list off a bunch of things like replay badges, a lot of stuff with PvP, immunity, a lot of actual content, mechanics, story, lore, direction, all that kind of stuff. You could have a pretty full conversation. With SJ and with Nerd of Prey, I would struggle. I consider I've been around since DC from the very beginning. I know a lot of I consider myself encyclopedia knowledge of DC. You can ask me what the game was like back in the very beginning, what kind of changed. I keep up with DC history. That's partially my job as a YouTuber, to be able to compare what it was before to what it is now. And really, I would struggle with determining Nerd of Prey's impact on the game. The only thing I could say would be like a lore side. Like, she was much more involved on the story side, like all the one woman kind of themes, the lore, storylines. And I mean, that's certainly a part of a creative director, but really in terms of an overall impact to the game, that's not. I mean, you release an episode story, after 3 or 4 months, everyone's forgotten about it and only goes back to play sometimes. Like, no one's continually running old content just for the story. Because, I mean, all the cutscenes, the storylines are all the exact same. I mean, it just kind of gets tedious after a while. I'm sure some players like that. I'm sure some people may have loved SJ as a creative director. But really, for someone that wanted to see an actual impactful change to DC during those years, I didn't see it. But with Al Rivera, when you go into some of his posts, so this is on the Star Trek Universe Online. Why do I keep saying Universe Online? Start the STO Reddit. Captain Gecko was his name. He might keep that as well with DC. That'd be interesting to see. But if we kind of go to it here, let me say one thing. If you're reading this, you're probably more an average fan. Assume you'd like the game. As lead designer, most decisions come through me one way or another. This is from 9 years ago, but it still gives insight of what he was like. His as a person, how he treats the game, what could treat DC. Where I lost track here. Yeah, so design decisions come through my way or another. Not all decisions are mine. Like many business, STO exists to deliver the best product we can and get as many people to play as possible, and in turn earn money for the company. As well, with any game, I realize parts of STO that some people don't like, and also that most people who play STO love the game, which has huge parallels to DC. I mean, that no one would say that's wrong with DC as well. And if we get down to the bottom here, I guess the main point I'm trying to make here is that not everyone loves every aspect of STO, and sometimes I'm the scapegoat for that, and that's okay. But remember this, if there's design aspects of STO you don't like, I'm probably in some way responsible for that, and I'm sorry that you don't like those things. But on the other side, there is something that you love about the game, the story, in this case, the parallels to DC, but the ships, systems, characters, missions, items, enemies, Star Trekkiness. I probably had a lot to do with that too, and so did a lot of other talented people. So the advantage, well, I wouldn't say advantage, but I mean the parallels you can take from this is, obviously Star Trek is a huge IP similar to DC, so at least he has a plethora of experience, almost 20 years, more than 20 years experience in terms of that MMO, especially on an older game. Like STO came out before DC, I think it was like 2009. So then you have those engine components working on like an older game, knows the limitations of what's possible, being able to still release stuff, and now, because he just recently left Cryptic Studios. The engine's not the same. DC's on Unreal Engine 3. STO is on their own, like the Cryptic game engine, like their proprietary. But at least it gives an insight to what he can be like and what his personality like and how he treated STO, which I think is more Spittle type, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Because even when you look at Spittle and disagree with a lot of things he did play the game. He was heavily involved. Did all those PvP streams. He used to raid, be our tank in our Nexus raids with Family. He'd be in our TeamSpeak hanging out. So, as much as I would be the first thing to say the things that Spittle did wrong, but I'm also at the same first time to praise him for the stuff he did successfully. So that's why I'd much rather have a Spittle type than another Prey type for a creative director. And that ties into it here as well, which someone posted as well. So this is another kind of parallel to DC, so we'll have to kind of figure that out, because this community seems like the STO community, from what I'm reading, is pretty similar to DC. So people figured out very quickly the best way to earn XP is to farm Romulan patrols, at which time had no cooldown. So you could went into a group with high difficulty, you could run through that insanely fast and earn a ton of XP. I went ballistic over players doing this, accused them of cheating, threatened to ban players. Some were given temporary bans and shut down all the patrols, eventually to bring back with 30-minute cooldowns. So that's something that will parallel really well to the DC community, because everyone knows here, any kind of glitch or advantage or cheese that you can have in DC to give yourself an advantage, the community will jump on instantly and blow up. The last money glitch blew up over a weekend. All it took was one weekend, and you had trillions of dollars into the economy. So but at the same time, Spittle was the same way. If you guys remember when the One Piece on PS3 beat Paradox Wave, they did it by exploiting grounding and flying up in the air and killing the bosses and sitting on top of the pillars. The first thing Jens did was like, no, that's not legit. You didn't beat Paradox Wave first. That's a glitch. And then when people post on the forums about it or try to call them out on it, because obviously, that's what some PS3 players were like back then, especially some of the One Piece guys. I interacted with some of them over time. He, did the same thing. He'd ban them, accuse them of cheating, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of parallels that we can find from his time at STO to what DC is going to be like. And that's what I'm looking forward to. For me, I don't want a stagnant, status quo DC Universe Online. And that's what a creative director will have the most impact on. Because think of a DC, we have, it's easy to put us on autopilot. We have seasonals, we have seasonal events, even Save the Universe survival mode. When it comes back, there's really minor changes. So, it's really simple to have new content continually come out, but be the exact same with all the anniversary events and everything else. So that's what we don't want. DC's been stagnant for too long. We need changes, not just content-wise and lore and story-wise, but also from a mechanical or system standpoint as well, which is hoping what he'll do, because he already has that experience from STO and he used to do that. So he's not just like a story guy, which you pretty much draw parallels to what SJ like. SJ was just kind of story, had no idea what was going on the system side. You saw her streams, you saw how she carried herself in game as a player, or her loadout, all that kind of stuff. You can draw the parallels that she was not in the game for the mechanic side or raid mechanics or anything like that, systems. It was much more story driven, where Jens was both. He did story, but also heavily focused on the mechanics and system side with PvP and PvE. So I'm sure STO has been around for a long time. Like I said, I'm sure some people are going to have their own personal opinions on Rivera or may have experiences with them. You can certainly provide that in the comment section because I'd like to hear them as well. But I think overall, this is going to be a great opportunity for DC for this type of person to come to DC and take over a position as impactful as a creative director. But ultimately, it's still going to be wait and see. It's not like he can make massive changes from the very start. But I think at least this is a promising hire in terms of what to expect from Rivera going forward. So take care, guys. Thanks as always, and we'll see you next video.